It all started on a quiet Saturday morning in my neighborhood, the kind of morning where everything feels just a little too calm. I'd just gotten back from a night shift, ready to catch a few hours of sleep before enjoying the weekend. My Tesla Model S, which I usually keep parked in my driveway, was sitting right where I left it. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first glance. Birds chirping, sprinklers going off, and the occasional jogger running by. I live in a fairly upscale suburban community, not the type of place where you expect trouble. But as I would soon learn, that assumption was dead wrong. Around noon, I got a knock on my door. It was my neighbor, Rick, who lives 2 houses down. He looked concerned and said, "Hey man, I think someone's messing with your car." I was still half groggy from sleep but followed him out. We walked toward my driveway, and that's when I saw it. All 4 tires on my Tesla had been slashed. Not just deflated. Slashed. Deep, deliberate cuts like someone had taken a box cutter or a knife and dragged it across each tire. The sight jolted me fully awake. My heart started pounding, not because of the damage, but because of the sheer brazenness of it. My car was parked in full view of the street, under a security camera, and in a neighborhood where stuff like this just doesn't happen. I immediately went into cop mode. I crouched down to inspect the slashes. Clean cuts. Consistent. Same angle on each tire. Whoever did this either knew what they were doing or had done it before. This wasn't the work of some bored teenager. Then Rick said something that really got my attention. "You didn't hear them earlier. There were these 2 guys in some cheap uniforms walking around the block like they owned the place. They had badges. Fake-looking ones, and clipboards. I thought they were new HOA guys or something, but we've never had anyone patrol like that before." I asked him if he saw which way they went, and he pointed toward the community entrance. They were stopping at random houses. Saying something about non-compliant parking or visible trash cans. You know, stupid HOA crap. They even told Mrs. Hardly she had to move her lawn gnome. Now I was suspicious. Our HOA, for all its annoying regulations, didn't have any kind of uniformed patrol. Any enforcement notices were mailed or emailed, not delivered by 2 guys with badges pretending to be cops. I went straight back inside and pulled up my security cam footage from the past few hours. There they were. 2 guys, mid-30s maybe, both wearing what looked like knockoff tactical uniforms, black pants, navy shirts with Velcro patches, and belts that tried to look like duty belts but were missing anything useful. Their badges were shiny metal ovals with the word security etched on them in Comic Sans or something just as ridiculous. One of them had sunglasses on like he thought he was in a movie. The other one had a clipboard and seemed to be reading off some kind of checklist. I watched the footage of them walking up to my driveway. They stopped, pointed at the Tesla, said something to each other. Then one of them pulled a knife from his belt, not even trying to be discreet, and started slashing the tires while the other stood lookout. I froze the frame, zoomed in, and got a clear shot of both their faces. I didn't even have to think twice. I grabbed my badge, threw on jeans and a t-shirt, and headed to my cruiser parked in the garage. Technically I was off duty, but the law doesn't stop applying just because I'm not clocked in. I called it in, let dispatch know I was responding to criminal mischief and impersonation. They sent a couple of uniforms to help out. Meanwhile, I drove out the same way Rick said they went, checking side streets and alleyways. Sure enough, I spotted them near the back of the neighborhood, standing next to a gray Dodge Durango with magnetic decals that read, Neighborhood Safety Patrol. It was laughably fake, like something out of a parody skit. They were in the middle of confronting another homeowner when I pulled up behind them, lights flashing. The guy with the clipboard turned around first, visibly startled. The one with the knife, yeah, he still had it, dropped his hand to his side and tried to act casual. I stepped out of the car, badge around my neck, and said, "State Trooper. Hands where I can see them." They froze. One of them stammered something like, "We're just with the HOA, sir." I walked up, grabbed the clipboard guy by the arm, and cuffed him right there. The other one took a step back like he was thinking about running, but one glance at the second cruiser coming around the corner changed his mind. Within minutes, they were both in cuffs and sitting on the curb. Turns out they weren't part of the HOA at all. Not even remotely. Just two guys who had a personal grudge against the way the neighborhood was going downhill. They thought if they started enforcing made-up rules, they could restore order. Slashing tires, threatening people, impersonating officers, that was their brilliant plan. One of them had a minor record for vandalism. The other had been fired from a private security job a year ago. Back at my place, we collected the footage, filed the reports, and documented everything. The damage to the Tesla was over $2,000. New tires, alignment, cleanup. Luckily insurance covered it, but that wasn't the point. The point was these guys thought they could intimidate people into compliance by pretending to be something they're not. That's not just illegal, it's dangerous. What they didn't count on was picking the wrong house. The wrong car. The wrong person. They thought they were slashing the tires of some guy who parked a little too close to the curb. They didn't know they were messing with a state trooper with surveillance footage, backup on call, and a real badge. That's how part one of this story ends, with two fakes in cuffs and justice rolling in. But that was only the beginning. The fallout from their little stunt would ripple through the neighborhood in ways none of us saw coming. Word spread quickly after the incident. By Sunday morning, almost everyone in the neighborhood had heard about the two guys pretending to be HOA enforcers and slashing the tires on my Tesla. Some people were shocked, others were furious, and a few admitted they'd spoken to the same men earlier that week without realizing anything was off. I started getting texts and knocks on the door, neighbors wanting to share their experiences or express their support. Some of them were scared. Others were angry that something like this could happen in a gated community where we all paid a premium for peace of mind. The HOA board, of course, went into damage control mode. An emergency meeting was scheduled, and residents were invited to attend. It was held in the community center, and the room was packed. More people than I'd ever seen show up for anything HOA related before. The president of the board, a guy named Gerald who usually looked like he was half asleep during meetings, was suddenly wide-eyed and sweating like a politician at a press conference. He opened by stating that the two individuals involved had no official relationship with the HOA, that they had never been hired, contracted, or authorized to represent the association in any way. People demanded answers. How did they get away with pretending to be official for so long? Why didn't anyone check their credentials? Could this have been avoided? Some neighbors, especially the older ones, had been approached by these guys and actually followed their bogus instructions, moving trash cans, trimming bushes, even repainting mailboxes. That revelation hit the crowd like a wave. There was an audible shift in mood as people realized how easily they'd been manipulated. Then Mrs. Hartley, who's in her 70s and doesn't take crap from anyone, stood up and recounted how one of the men had threatened to fine her for her lawn gnome, saying it violated Section 4B of the Aesthetic Uniformity Clause. That clause doesn't even exist, but she took him at his word and moved the gnome indoors. She was livid. I've lived here 18 years and I've never been so insulted. That little ceramic frog cost me $200. As much as the meeting was meant to restore order, it only stirred up more frustration. The board had no answers for why no one noticed these imposters sooner. One neighbor suggested the HOA had grown too controlling, making it easy for anyone wearing a badge to seem legitimate. We've been conditioned to follow arbitrary rules without questioning them, he said. That hit home for a lot of folks. In the days that followed, law enforcement continued investigating the two suspects. They were facing multiple charges: criminal mischief, impersonating a public official, attempted fraud, and possession of a weapon during the commission of a crime. As the lead officer who'd made the initial arrest, I was looped into the case from the beginning. The DA was already preparing charges, and it was clear they'd be facing real time, especially with the impersonation element and the fact they were caught on multiple cameras throughout the neighborhood. Meanwhile, the neighborhood itself went through a transformation. Several residents started reviewing their home security setups, some even installing cameras for the first time. A private Facebook group for residents became very active, with people sharing updates, suspicious activity, and neighborhood watch tips. Ironically, the fake patrol had inspired the creation of a real one. Only this time, it was actually organized through proper channels and in coordination with the local police department. Even though we caught them, the incident left a lingering sense of unease. Some people said they now felt unsafe. Others felt embarrassed for falling for the act. I tried to reassure them when I could. Don't feel stupid, I said more than once. These guys knew what they were doing. They exploited trust and used fear to get what they wanted. That's on them, not you. A few days after the arrests, I received a call from a local news outlet. They'd gotten wind of the story and wanted to do a segment. Normally I'd pass on something like that, but in this case, I felt it was important. Not for my ego, but because other neighborhoods needed to be aware of how easily someone could pull a stunt like this. We did a short interview outside the precinct, and I explained what happened, from the slashed tires to the arrest. I kept it professional, made it clear I was speaking as an officer and as a neighbor. The segment aired that evening and got more attention than I expected. Several viewers from nearby communities contacted the station to say they'd seen similar fake patrols in their neighborhoods. It seemed these two guys weren't acting alone. Within a week, a third suspect was picked up based on a tip, caught doing the same impersonation routine in a neighboring suburb. This guy had fake ID cards, a mock citation book, and even wore a body cam, though it turned out he wasn't recording anything. He was just trying to look legit. At that point, it was clear this was part of a bigger scam, one where guys dressed like authority figures and pressured people into following made-up rules. They weren't just about slashing tires or flexing power. They were testing how far they could go, how many people they could control without anyone questioning it. That realization left a deeper mark than any property damage. It reminded everyone how vulnerable we are to appearances. Put on a uniform, speak with confidence, and most people will obey, even if what you're saying is total nonsense. It's the same principle behind so many cons. Look official, act confident, and people hesitate to challenge you. Personally, the whole thing made me reflect on the uniform I wear every day. It's a symbol of trust, of responsibility, and of law. But it can be twisted, too, in the wrong hands. That's why impersonation is such a serious crime, not because of the costume, but because of the fear and manipulation it enables. By the end of the month, the suspects were officially indicted. The case was strong, and I testified before a grand jury to lay out what I saw, what I recorded, and what the investigation uncovered. My Tesla was repaired, but I left a tiny scratch unpolished, a reminder of what had happened. A reminder that appearances can deceive, but truth has a way of cutting through the act. Neighbors began letting their guard down again, slowly. The lawn gnome returned to Mrs. Harley's yard. A few people even started joking about HOA SWAT teams and badge cosplay. But underneath the humor was a new awareness. We learned to ask questions, to verify, to trust, but confirm. That lesson may have come at the cost of a few tires, but it was a price worth paying for a neighborhood that finally woke up.